Okay. The next thing, as you obviously see here, guys, experience plus education equals success. And I think now that you've seen a care plan, you understand how you can take what you already know, your experience, plus a little bit further education on some things maybe you were unsure about, and it's going to bring everything cohesively together for that client, right? For sure. Now, this is my favorite picture. And if you like to draw, you can draw it, but of course you have it together. Isn't this my favorite picture, Megan? Yes, it is. Okay, so we're going to talk about the epidermis, but not only the epidermis, but the dermis too, okay? So, if you want to draw a square, but you have it in front of you, there's some very specific things that we need to worry about here. So, if you see my point off to the side, it says, draw an epidermis for your clients and discuss the most important layer, which is the basal layer. I cannot tell you how many times I have actually sat, like I said, on the floor, Indian style, and drawn this out, and the client says, wow, that makes a lot of sense. Now I understand why to use that retinol, or why to use that glycolic, or why to use that vitamin C, or whatever the case may be. Okay? All right, y'all got to participate a little bit. Y'all ready to stand up for me? Come on, stand up for just a minute. Come on. And this is on the board, but you also have it in front of you, so you're going to say it after me. And my little Somerville Medical Spa people, y'all probably did this in Florida with me, right? Yes. So here you go. We're going to repeat after me. Say stratum corneum. Say it a little bit louder. Stratum corneum. Stratum lucidum. Stratum granulosum. Stratum spinosum. Stratum germinativum. Let's say that last one again. Stratum germinativum. Y'all are really good at that, better than a lot of folks. Okay, but it's also known as the basal layer. Okay, you may now sit. You're back in aesthetic school, right? Okay. So, looking at this and then labeling it, let's pretend like you have a client right in front of you. And you've drawn this out and you're like, hey, I know this is a lot of words, but all you need to know is the fifth one is the basal layer. And we're going to reference that a lot in the treatment room. Does that sound okay to you? And they're going to say, sure, that's easy enough. I can remember one layer. Then you're going to draw some little circles and you're going to label those keratinocytes, okay? Keratinocytes. Keratinocytes are what? They're fetal or baby skin cells, okay? Keratinocytes. That's very key. We'll come back to it. Then we have melanocytes. You're going to draw some little squares. And what are melanocytes? Pigment cells. And pigment cells during hormonal issues do what? They start to overproduce. It's kind of like turning on a little lever and everything starts spewing out. I always give the analogy of kind of a paintball gun splattering against a wall, and it won't stop. But we're going to talk about different things to make it stop. Okay? All right. So when we create mitosis, what is mitosis? What is that? Division of cells. Is it important to create mitosis of keratinocytes? Yes. Okay, so here's the storyline that you're going to give to your clients, because this is important for anybody to learn or say, and just say right off the cuff. So you can say, okay, we're going to create mitosis of keratinocytes, which is kind of like turning a caterpillar into a butterfly, right? You're going to take that cell, and as an esthetician, we introduce different modalities, right? We introduce different stimuli, whether it's peels, whether it's machines, whatever. It's going to go down to that basal layer, stimulate mitosis, and I kind of call it mitosis magic. Mitosis magic helps to turn that keratinocyte into something new. It's actually going to turn it into a stem cell. Do y'all know much about stem cells? We're going to talk about that. Then it's going to turn it into a mother cell, and then it's going to split into two new daughter cells. It's going to migrate upwards through the layers of the skin. And what is it going to pick up in the stratum granulosum? What does it say there? It's going to pick up keratin and lipids. So if you want to know what that is, here's what it is. So draw a line from keratin. Keratin is what gives the cell its hardened outer core, okay? It's going to give it its strength in many ways. It's almost like how a fetus in the womb hasn't formed, its bones even strong enough. It hasn't formed its skin yet, but as it starts to develop, it does, right? Then lipids, we just talked about that, are part of that oily, waxy coating that surrounds a cell, and we need both of those things for them to be healthy cells, right? Then they're going to migrate upwards through the layers of the skin, shut off all the old, dead corneocytes to produce fresh, new, shiny corneocytes. Do y'all like my picture of a diamond? Isn't that what our skin is supposed to look like? Yes. Okay. So we said we're going to draw this for our client, and we're going to talk about the differences between those cells and why they're important, and why we actually need to create differentiation, why we need to turn off the mechanism of action that's going to cause melanocyte production. And then it also says, why are the keratinocytes and melanocytes so significant to this layer? Because that is what people see. They see the old dead skin. They see the nasolabial folds. They see where mitosis needs to occur, and those are the cells you have to target. We're going to talk about over-the-counter versus professional products in a minute. Over-the-counter products, do they get to the basal layer of the skin? They unfortunately don't, and this is a great slideshow to actually showcase to your clients and discuss, hey, look, I mean, you know, you can buy whatever you want to from Walmart or CVS Pharmacy, but if you know some of these basic concrete facts, you'll think before you spend those dollars. It's wasted money nonetheless. Just because it might be cheaper doesn't mean it's actually going to work, okay? Then, can over-the-counter products penetrate to this layer? We said no. And then this gives clients an eye-opening viewpoint to understand that estheticians can reach these layers to incite results, right? Okay. Do y'all remember anything about the dermis? It's very important to remember this one, and I'll try to keep it short enough. But here's what you need to remember about the dermis. Not only is it made up of a papillary and reticular layer, which is very key, but it also houses something called the ECM umbrella, which stands for what? Extracellular matrix. So here's what I did. Whenever I'm looking at this particular chapter, I think, well, gosh, you know, this is very overwhelming because, of course, we've taught out of both the fundamentals and the advanced textbook. So the advanced one is very, very medical in nature, and it goes into this a great deal. And I said, well, what is going to make this easier? So when you're discussing this with clients, you're going to draw a little umbrella, and we're going to talk about our ECM umbrella that houses three things that are important to the estheticians, right? You have got collagen. We all know what that is, right? It's going to help to keep things very up and up. You need to have a springboard there in order for your epidermis to sit on top of, and that's very key. Okay. Then we have our elastin. Who in here likes radiofrequency skin tightening, or even if you're in medical, laser skin tightening? None of that existed when I was in esthetician school, and now it does, and it's such a neat thing you can do within your scope of practice, radiofrequency, because it sends alternating energy waveforms that produce nonspecific localized heat in the dermis and epidermis. That's exactly what it says in the textbooks. So it produces heat that bounces back and forth, which produces a very important cell, which is not listed here, but it's called a fibroblast. Okay, everybody know what a fibroblast is? I would write that down because it's my favorite cell there ever was. And fibroblasts do what? They produce collagen, elastin, and then everybody say glycosaminoglycans. Do you like that word? It's a long word, but it's really fun to say to your clients because they'll think, oh my gosh, she's really smart. I like it. But glycosaminoglycans have the word amino in it, and amino acids are building blocks of proteins. So it's actually part of something bigger called a proteoglycan, if you're really interested to know about it, and look a little bit further into this information. But we're all made up of a bunch of different protein structures. And if you took any of my online CEU courses lately, you probably took the one last week on anatomy and histology and how your cells produce a lot of proteins. Your mitochondria actually does. It has ribosomes that produce proteins and all of that. And do you know, and y'all know I'm from the South and I love some barbecue and I love some meat, but do we have to eat meat to actually create proteins in our body? We don't. You need three things for your cells to survive, and it's going to be food, which is nutrition, which primarily comes from antioxidants, which comes from plants. and fruits, right? And then oxygen and water. So food, oxygen, and water. Who in here drinks enough water? We could all do a little bit better, including myself, but you really need food, oxygen, and water in order for your cells to thrive and survive. So that's a really good thing. So all I want you to remember is that fibroblasts produce all three of these things, and what happens when we actually lack glycosaminoglycans? A lot of things, and this is very key for our hormonal clients too. Everybody point to this area of your skin and say nasolabial folds. Nasolabial folds, and then point right here, vertical lip lines, right? Are we starting to see that kind of stuff? Unfortunately, we do. Not everybody in here has to deal with that yet. But when we start seeing the hollows in our cheeks, nasolabial folds, vertical lip lines, and what about that glabellar frown line? That is when you have lack of desmosomes or lack of your natural God-given hyaluronic acid, correct? Which is why we love our topical-based hyaluronic acid. But you want to make sure that you focus on the fibroblast stimulation. Okay, so then, a lot of this stuff is in my book, which I'll email to you guys too. But tier 1 products. Let's talk about products really quickly. Are y'all doing okay? Good. Okay, so over-the-counter products, if you put things into two categories from active ingredients and carriers or vehicles, does that make sense when I say actives are what are going to do the job and the vehicles are what are just essentially going to carry them to where they're going? Okay, so we're going to talk about those too. So over-the-counter products is essentially like saying, and let me move it over to that slide, it's essentially going to be where the actives are a smaller concentration. It's going to be at the bottom of the ingredient label. So let me actually ask y'all that question. Who in here reads ingredient labels all the time? Okay. So I work with a lab, and I have a lab that does some things for me. And I was developing a new product. And the rep that I work with, her name is Karen, and she said, what did she say? It was so eye-opening, because I know that they do this, but the way she said it just kind of made me mad. She said, well, do you want this to be active or do you want it to be for marketing purposes? So what do you think that means? Let's say that we're doing a retinol product. Do you want it to be active and clinical, or do you want it just to be for marketing purposes that retinol is in the product? What's going to be more concentrated if you were to, your more active product? What's going to cost you more? Even for the people that are developing products or whatever, that might be a goal that you have. It's going to cost you a little bit more, which is going to cost the consumer a little bit more, but that's okay because we as estheticians, we understand that you get what you pay for oftentimes. You would never, I would hope, want to put your name on something that had retinol at the very bottom of the totem pole. That you can only say, oh God, well, this has retinol in it, so I can market it to say it's a retinol product. That's not very ethical if you ask me, if you can't even get the retinol to be delivered into the skin, correct? So, over-the-counter products, long story short, are going to be a very small percentage of active ingredients, if you're kind of taking notes. And then the vehicles are going to be what? Are they going to be larger in molecular structure or smaller? Larger. Okay, so we said we again have to get to that basal layer. Can we get anything to drive down to that basal layer if it's got a large molecular structure? We cannot, so keep that in mind. Do you like that information, Deborah? Okay, so then tier 2 is where clients need to live. Okay, that's where clients need to live. It's usually going to only be sold by licensed providers like yourself, or someone that has licensed providers on the floor. Have y'all ever been to Ulta? I get this question a lot, and that was actually a question that the lady asked me on the podcast. She said, well, I go to Ulta and I have no freaking clue what I need to use or what's happening. And of course, I'd rather her purchase things from an esthetician. But I said, well, do you ever notice that they have a whole side of the store that's over the counter versus a whole side of the store that's more professional or clinical grade. And she said, well, that makes a lot more sense, right? And they actually have licensed providers that work in there to kind of make professional recommendations, blah, blah, blah. Because the thing about clinical is what? It's going to be something that actually creates some change. So are some people not going to do well with certain retinols? Yeah, some people might be oversensitized to it. So that's why you guys can make more clinical recommendations than just someone that works at a counter that has no idea how science and aesthetics works. Okay, so a quick definition of tier 2, it's where people need to live, and it's also going to be a higher percentage of active ingredients. And the vehicles are going to be what size? Big or small? Small. To then do what? Think about Lamborghini one more time, where it delivers down to that basal layer to produce that change. We're all good? Perfect. Okay, then you have got prescription products. Who in here works with clients that utilize prescription tretinoin or prescription hydroquinone? Okay. So I love prescription products, but here's the thing. Most people don't necessarily need that, and a lot of times prescription tretinoin can do what? It's great for shedding the skin, which is a beautiful thing if you have people with thickened skin from laying out in the sun, but what it also does is it thins out the skin, correct? What's that? Yes, Lord have mercy. And here's what people don't often realize. Do you think retinol or prescription tretinoin, same family, do you think it goes down to the basal layer to produce new cells? No, it actually works in the first, maybe 3, maybe 4 layers just to shed the skin. So a lot of physicians do what? They make this recommendation and they say, well, you need to be on Cetaphil and you need to be on prescription tretinoin. And that's doing nothing but shedding your skin. Do they still need the glycolics of them all to produce new skin cells? Absolutely, so you can add that in there. Do they still need the vitamin C's, the peptides, the hyaluronic acid for hydration, for lifting? Most certainly. So you can see how we all have to work with that, don't we? And we have to educate on the fact that it's okay if you are on this. However, I need you to add a couple more things if you genuinely want to reach this goal, correct? Or you have people that overuse it. Have you ever seen someone that's used tretinoin every day of the week that week? Whew, and then they come to see you and they look like a red inflamed apple and they're like, hello, what do I do? And I'll say, well, truly, because we have 2 physicians on our team, you literally are only supposed to use prescription tretinoin once or twice a week at most. If your skin is not shedding, then that means that you've gotten used to it and it's a waste of time to put on your skin. Do y'all kind of feel that way for those of y'all that have used it? You're like, ooh, it shedded my skin for a little bit and now it has done nothing. You need to lay off of it and come back to it, use it once or twice a week. Okay, then prescription hydroquinone. Y'all know me. If you know my history, you know that I love some 4% hydroquinone, which is prescription level. But the thing about 4% hydroquinone or hydroquinone in general is it is what? It's a very toxic ingredient, okay? So I've actually changed my tune and I love arbutin, A-R-B-U-T-I-N, okay? That is a newer, and I say newer, it's been around for a couple of years, alpha arbutin. And it is actually, if you dig a little bit and do some research on arbutin, it comes from a natural plant source that actually mimics the molecular structure of hydroquinone. So it's similar in nature, but one is toxic and one is not. So if you're thinking of things to do other than kojic acid for your brighteners, right, or whatever, you can pull out the arbutin, and that is something that estheticians can carry. So just FYI on that. Who carries something with arbutin in it? Anybody in here? Do y'all know what I'm talking about, or is that new? They might. Hydroquinone is great, and it really works for hormonal hyperpigmentation, but It's toxic, it's not great for the pregnant women, not great for your sensitive skin types, and not good to get people addicted to, because it almost can be that. And again, you need to use it for just a couple months and then get off of it. I taught a lecture one time in Miami on the best topic ever. I'm just kidding. It was on topical anesthetics. How entertaining might that have been? It wasn't really, but I had to speak on it for an electrolysis little class that they were holding. And do y'all realize that topical anesthetics can actually get into your bloodstream and cause a lot of blood toxicity levels? And ultimately, there have been at least 2 cases of people that have died from the overuse of topical anesthetic on a large part of their body. Someone was getting laser hair removal, and they decided to take some topical anesthetic, put it on their whole leg. Do you need to be numb for laser? No, it's not that bad. And wrap the whole leg in cellophane. That is more than half of your body, by the way, is your legs. And that person ended up dying. I've actually had students, Dr. Brittany, she's a what is she? She's a pharmacist up in Charlotte, and she went through our aesthetics program. She said, Courtney, I kid you not, I was sitting in a lobby getting a laser service done, and they sat me there by myself with some numbing medication on my face, and I literally almost blacked out, had to crawl on the floor to find someone to come and help me. So I'm telling you, topical anesthetics, the hydroquinones of it all, and all these very toxic chemicals that we are around and we use, right? It can be very detrimental to your clients, and it's something you want to just know, and you make that decision and decide if you want to work with it or whatever. If someone's numbing in your treatment room, is it not a good idea to stay there with the client? Whew. I'll tell this story, and then I got to move on. I'm sure I do for time's sake. I still got time. Okay. So, little old lady client of mine who I love. I think she's moved on and went to live with her kids somewhere out of state. But I was giving her a laser service. She loves to get the halo procedure done and love to get all this stuff. But her skin is so tight from a facelift she had 10 or 15 years ago, right? And she's on a ton of medications. Do you have clients that bring you their medication list? Yeah, and you can tell she's on blood thinner. She's got a lot of bruises on her arms and that sort of thing, which is fine. I mean, I'm sure she needs to be on that. On blood thinner medication for some reason. So I looked at her, I said, let me tell you something. I know the doctor cleared you for this procedure today, but I love you and I know you a little bit more personally. I'm not okay doing this beyond today, okay? So can you say stuff like that as an esthetician? Yeah, if you're not comfortable doing someone because you feel like it's going to be harmful to their health, just because the physician okays it, doesn't mean you have to perform it. So just the funny part was I sat there while she was numbing and rubbed her feet, and I'm just staring at her because I'm thinking, oh gosh, I just want to make sure you're okay. Before we do this laser procedure, I really didn't even want to sit there and do any charting or nothing. I wanted to make sure she was going to be okay to proceed with the laser service, even just putting topical anesthetic on her skin. So things to think about. All right, so last thing on the prescription products, it's something we need to be aware of. So the 2 tiers you need to be aware of in this tier is just your prescription tretinoins, right? There's 0.025, 0.05, and 0.1%. There's different brands out there. Then you have got your 4% hydroquinone, and that's typically what you're going to see on a topical perspective, right? There's other things that people can take orally or what have you that are prescriptions, but topically that's something that you might see a client use or make the recommendation that they use it. All right, so then if you want to look here, and I'm going to go through this quickly because y'all have this in front of you. Acids versus nourishers. Acids, we said, do what? They break skin cells down, and nourishers do what? They build cells up. So this hopefully is a good review for most of you in here. We're going to talk about 5 in each category, and that's a great place to start. If you have a client in front of you, you can say, okay, we're going to do some homework today, and I'm going to make sure you know at least 2 acids from our little talk and 2 nourishers, and that's where we're going to begin because, their long-term understanding of why they need to do certain procedures or use this particular product is very much based on how well you've educated them, correct? If they're not in compliance with what they need to be using, we need to think, what have I not done, or what have I not said, or what have I not written out for them that they're not understanding why this is important. Okay, so, yes? I know, and this is Rita, who I love, by the way. We love Rita. This is, well, and many of you have heard this story because y'all like stories, I hope. So here's the story. All right. When I was a brand new esthetician, Rita, you know how clients are supposed to fill out consent forms, correct? And in the consent form, it's supposed to say, I will not use prescription tretinoin within 7 to 14 days of receiving this chemical peel service. Do clients tell you the truth all the time? No, never. So this client actually still comes to the spa, and I'm sure you've seen her. We won't name any names, and I love her to death, but here's what she did. This was years ago. I'm from Sumter, so we saw her there. And I had built her up to do a Jesner solution, okay? So she had seen me a couple times. She signs her consent forms, blah, blah, blah. So I use fan brushes to apply peels. You will see that when we move to the back of the room. So I start on her chest because she's got some sun damage. And I'm just applying, and I get right up on her chin. All of a sudden, her skin on her chin starts bubbling up like a volcano. That's the only best way I can explain it. I put my stuff down, and I neutralized it, and I looked at her, and I said, what did you do last night? What did you do to your skin last night? And she said, well, I went to my friend's house and we were looking through, her drawers in her bathroom and drinking some wine and whatever. And she said she had this stuff that she didn't use from the dermatologist anymore called Retin A. And she gave it to me. And I said, do you realize that that is what I told you and what it says here that you have signed that you're not supposed to use right before a chemical peel? So long story short, was she overprocessed? 100%. So what did she walk around with for at least 3 or 4 weeks? A big old scab right there. So here's how I treated it, because unfortunately, still being her fault, and even though she signed off on it, it's how you handle it that matters. So you have to donate your time to dealing with it. I had her come in twice a week, Rita, for LED light therapy, but then I actually gave her stem cell serums. That was actually brand new, just coming out when stem cells were actually still made from aborted fetuses and that sort of thing. That doesn't exist now. Do y'all realize that? I researched some lines and they have all swapped over to the plant-based stem cells. So anyway, she was fine. But with that being said, you just have to be proactive with it. Stem cells are a good choice because it produces new cells without breaking skin cells down. And plant-based stem cells are phenomenal. Okay? Anybody have a really crazy story with overprocessing that you might not want to share? And I hope you don't. I hope you use that story and you tell your clients and say, well, let me tell you. What's going to happen to you is if you don't tell me the truth, is your skin's going to bubble up like a volcano and then you're going to have a scab. So is there anything else you want to share with me? So just make sure. Okay, so we're going to talk about these 2 categories. Do y'all like categories like that? Do you think that's something that clients would understand a lot better? I think so. Okay, so this is 2 slides into one, and many of you have seen this before if you are a student of mine or an alumni. Okay. All right, so AHAs, we're going to look at the left one first. What does it say in cursive writing? Works from the bottom up. What's on the bottom? The epidermis, the basal layer of the epidermis. Thank you very much. So works from the bottom up. Now look to the right. Beta hydroxy acid works from the top down. Isn't that a good way to remember that kind of stuff? Especially your goal is to educate the client at this point. So let's think of easy ways that we can educate them. Works from the bottom up, works from the top down. Now here's where y'all can see that molecular weight little box, right? Okay, so make sure you see that we've got glycolic, lactic, malic, tartaric, mandelic, whatever else there is. There's tons of AHAs. One that's not listed here is kojic acid, which is a brightener. But all you need to remember is that they all, in some capacity, work from the bottom up. Some just happen to be stronger than others. So if you're wondering, well, why do I love a mandelic peel so much, and why do my clients love it? Because it's actually a heavier weight alpha hydroxy acid. It doesn't give that same mitosis downtime that glycolic does. So it's actually a perfect way to start your chemical peel series with a client is those heavier weight AHAs. We also use a lot of different brands, but Peel Prepping Solution, from what I'm thinking of in particular, has citric acid in it. And citric acid is the heaviest weight AHA, is it not? Yep, so we see why that would be in a peel prepping solution. It's going to help to kind of degrease the skin and produce a little bit of AHA mechanisms, but without the harshness of the glycolics. So we still, in 2020, look at glycolic, as we said, as our strongest AHA, and you just want to ease your way into that one. And as you see, I have a different take on things with peels. Did you see us doing like a full-on series of glycolic peels for 3 or 4 sessions in a row, or a series of microdermabrasion facials? No. So that is a way to do it, but how are you going to hit different benchmarks of the skin, hit different levels of that skin layer, or whatever the case may be if you're not constantly changing? So I think that's one thing to take away from it. And then, if you look at beta-hydroxy acid, you'll see that there's more than one beta-hydroxy acid, but in aesthetics, we only use one. And what is that? Salicylic acid. And here's your quick definition for the client. It eats away at dirt and debris in those pores. And I always do this, kind of like, something that's eating away in those pores. So if someone has active acne, but then they also have scars, where do we need to treat first? Acne in particular that's not cystic is actually where? It's actually more in the top layers, and it's just more or less clogged pores at the end of the day, okay? So we want to take salicylic peels and just eat away all that dirt and debris in that pore, create an open channel. So where are scars actually? They're in the dermis. A scar, if you want to really write down a good definition, is a stretched elastin fiber. Okay? A scar is what? And elastin is where? In the dermis. Okay? So we've created that channel. Now can we get a little bit closer to the dermis of the skin and treat those scars? Yes, we can. So think about the why and the order in which you do things. And I always say this too. I've had estheticians work for me over the years, and do you know what their favorite chemical peel is of all time? The lactic peel. Who in here loves to use lactic peels on everybody? I think everyone does, because it leaves behind a little hydration finish, and people just think, God, this feels great, no big deal, I see a good result. But just remember, you don't want to stay stagnant with that one acid or that one ingredient. You want to make sure that you're always changing. So the key is always be changing. All right, so to wrap this one up, AHAs work from the bottom up, and BHAs work from the top down. Y'all got that?
Could you repeat what the definition of a scar is?
Yes, it is a stretched elastin fiber. So always go back to these pictures because it really helps me. I'm a visual learner too. So think of the ECM umbrella where you've got collagen, elastin, and glycosaminoglycans. Scars are just really difficult to treat because people either scar more flat or they scar more hypertrophied, which is almost like a keloidish sort of thing. So it just depends on how that person scars, and that really speaks to how you're going to treat it too, for sure. All right, next one is retinol. What does it say at the top? Works to speed up cell turnover. Works to speed up cell turnover to better serve you. Of course, we have to have a cheeky little saying in there, but works to speed up cell turnover. So all that means is it sheds the skin. So just remember that. You want to make sure that you understand that retinol only sheds the skin. So that's great for just kind of seeing and feeling that resurfaced texture. So when I think of retinol, I think texture, but in many ways, you need to look at what is missing. Because a lot of folks love retinol, but we need to think of what it's actually doing, which is just shedding the skin, and then we're going to add in some AHAs, BHAs, and of course some nourishers. We have the prescription level, and we have the second tier. Okay, prescription level we've already talked about. We are okay with this, but in many ways it makes it difficult for us to do our jobs as estheticians because we can't do a lot when people are utilizing that. So when talking about retinol, and getting people to understand why they may or may not need to use it, it's going to help them to really speak to this ingredient knowledge, correct? So they understand, I might not need to be on this for a little bit while I'm seeing Linda in the treatment room, or while I'm seeing Victoria, I could be off it for a little bit. And using second tier retinol is actually okay to do during peels. It is truly the prescription level only that you have to stay away from. Good to go there? And then hydroquinone, I had a crown on this one because I used to love my hydroquinone, but what does it say? There's a disclaimer on that slide, and it causes what? Y'all see that? Should be right in front of you too. It can cause little tumors, which are carcinogenic little cancers for sure. Of course, they've tested this on lab rats and things like that. But here's the thing. You know, with anything in this world, it's okay to do a little bit, but not a lot. So if you have someone that needs to be on that because they have extremely darkened, splotchy hyperpigmentation from hormonal issues, use it for a little bit and then get off of it, switch to the Kojics, the Arbutans, things of that nature. What do y'all think about hydroquinone? Does anybody in here use this or recommend it to clients? Not you do? Because 2% is never enough. It always has to be the 4%. Good. I'm so glad to see you. Now I'm just realizing who you are. I'm one of those people that hates to wear contacts, by the way, and I literally have my glasses up here. Otherwise, I could not drive. I can't see you from probably here to you right there. So I just wing it. Okay. All right. So then, of course, I cover all of our brand names, but I'm sure y'all kind of can figure out what brands those are, right? Can't talk about it though. All right, benzoyl peroxide. Who uses benzoyl peroxide? We're still in the acid category. Okay, benzoyl peroxide's great, but here's what it needs to be used for. Benzoyl peroxide is in the oxygen family, and oxygen kills, well, specifically what? It kills acne bacteria. Is bacteria the only issue when it comes to acne? Unfortunately not. And so here's your grades of acne. I would write this down because this helps you remember this one. So grade 1 acne is what? More open comedones or blackheads, however you want to say it. So grade 1, more open comedones or blackheads. Make sure you know that those are interchangeable terms, okay? Grade 2, and I'll say all this all over again too, Linda. Grade 2 is open comedones and closed comedones, so whiteheads and blackheads. We've all been there, done that, right? Grade 3 is all of the above plus redness and inflammation. All the above plus redness and inflammation. And then grade 4 is all the above plus cysts. All the above plus cysts, okay? So I'll say that one more time and then you're gonna answer a question for me. Grade 1 is more open comedones like blackheads. Grade 2 is open comedones and closed comedones, whiteheads, blackheads. Grade 3 is all the above plus redness. Grade 4 is all the above plus cysts. So which two grades have the redness and inflammation? 3 and 4. What is redness and inflammation a sign of? Well, in the case of acne, it's a sign of bacteria, okay? So the bacteria issues truly come in during grade 3 and 4 acne. So if oxygen, specifically this sort of oxidative oxygen here, which is actually not good for you, I'll talk about that in a minute, if that treats acne bacteria, what grades of acne does benzoyl peroxide only need to be used on? grades 3 and 4. How many people totally misuse this? Because they buy things off of, infomercials and all that good stuff, and then they decide, oh, well, this is working for a little while, and then it stops working. That's how BPO does. So it's one of the ingredients your skin gets used to the most. So it really, in my opinion, should come in a serum bottle about this tall. You use it for grades 3 and 4 acne for literally a maximum of 3 to 4 weeks, guys. Get them off of that and then place them on a salicylic glycolic mixture paired with stem cells. That's how you literally treat grade 3 and 4 acne. So 3 to 4 weeks, have them pretty heavy on benzoyl peroxide. By that time, the bacteria, the redness is going to start going away, okay, for grades 3 and 4 acne. Now you back them up into a grade 2. At that point also, the benzoyl peroxide is getting used to their skin anyhow, so it's time to be done with it, okay, 3 to 4 weeks. Then you're going to switch them over to a glycolic salicylic mixture, which is going to, of course, produce new cells and eat away at dirt and debris in the pore, which is another piece of acne. Then we also want to nourish your skin a little bit, have some lipid barrier protection a little bit, and do stem cells. Stem cells produce new cells too. Any questions about that?
So when we talk about bacteria for acne, is the bacteria in the body itself, or is it also environmental too? Like, where is the bacteria coming from?
Well, that is a very loaded question, because when I think of internally, I kind of go towards internal inflammation. So if it's our internal inflammation specific, that's a different whole laundry list of discussions. But in terms of bacteria in the skin, it's more just in the skin tomorrow, and that's what it's treating. Yeah, to treat internal inflammation and that sort of thing, you're going to do that with stuff like digestive enzyme supplements, okay, or probiotics, and also getting away from things like dairy and sugar, which we've talked about tons. And guess who loves dairy and sugar the absolute most? Hello, right here. But it is going to be a big factor in hormonal everything. It really is. When y'all start to turn 30, some of you young people, y'all will see what I mean. All right, so oxygen in the presence of bacteria kills the bacteria. So now we're going to get into our nourishers, and then we're going to move on. If y'all need to get up, use the restroom, whatever, please do so. I will give y'all a break in a little bit. Y'all okay? Okay. All right, so vitamin C does a couple of different things, and here is what I love about it. Vitamin C can be in cream forms, can be in serum forms, but of course, what do I love the most, a cream or a serum? Serums, because serums are what? Smaller molecular size structures every day of the week. So I'm very serum heavy, and you should be too. I love a good cream, I love a good lotion or whatever, but that needs to be very last ditch thought process. It always needs to be serum first, okay? But vitamin C is a skin brightener. It also is the only vitamin to synthesize collagen. So a lot of people don't think about that one. Vitamin C creates collagen. That's a big deal. So we love that for anti-aging. Then, when should we use vitamin C? No. You can use it at night, but it's ideally used in the morning because it actually boosts your sun protection. Let's just pretend there's an invisible shield around my body. I put my sun protection on, and it kind of protects me about from here to my skin, like about that much. If you put vitamin C up underneath your sunscreen, it really extends out your protection. So it is a sunscreen booster. But you can use it at night, and here is how you use it. Vitamin C is an antioxidant, and we know this. What do antioxidants do? They kill free radicals and pretty much anything that's not an antioxidant. So if I take a glycolic acid serum and decide, ooh, let me just put some, vitamin C on top of this, what's going to happen? It's going to cancel out the effectiveness of both. So write that down. Vitamin C does not play well with others. Vitamin C does not play well with others. It cancels out the effectiveness of a lot of anything else, especially anything that would be carcinogenic, hydroquinones, benzoyl peroxides. Does that make sense? Did I freak you out, Linda?
No. There is one, I know you can't talk about labels, but there is a product that they encourage to include at the end of a treatment, and it is retinol
That is very interesting.
It's also an exfoliant.
So she's saying there's a brand that even suggests vitamin C as a booster at the end of a retinol.
Actually, there's one
I don't agree with that.
It's a retinol, vitamin C, and then there's one that's regular, and then there's one that's max.
Okay,
The max one causes puffy exfoliation for about 10 days.
okay, gotcha.
Not a lot, enough where you're just,
Right.
So, yeah.
And y'all may not be able to hear Linda, but she's talking about this peel.
That was a facial that they, when I went to a seminar with them.
Well, do your research, because here's what. I love all brands and I love a lot of things in aesthetics, but do your due diligence on the science side of things. Vitamin C truly cancels out the effectiveness of two ingredients the most, glycolic and retinol. So just think about that. It is very interesting. So I don't know if they're talking about leaving it on and then putting the vitamin C, or if you could do the retinol peel, remove it, and then put vitamin C on.
It's all in one little,
Okay.
one little bottle, and at the end of the facial, you can include it. In fact, they incorporate it.
Okay, I think I know what you're talking about. Here's what.
Leave it on after 15 minutes, and you blot it dry until then that's warm.
That should be fine. Here's what. If it's in the same vial or the same product, guys, it usually has some sort of liposomal activity that kind of time delivers other things. So if it's already in the product together, Linda, that's okay. And I would hope their scientists in their labs have kind of done a time release little capsule that just creates it to where it can work simultaneously together. So that is something that can happen. But just when clients are layering serums at home, it's a good idea to educate them on the fact that layering is not always a good thing. It depends on what it is. So that might be okay. We'll talk about that one. Okay, then the next one, we know this. I'm not going to talk about this one a lot. What does hyaluronic acid do, everybody? Holds 1,000 times its weight in water. We know this. It's a water binder, a skin plumper. And here's the thing that y'all need to look at in 2020 going into 2021 is the different versions of hyaluronic acid that you're going to see. And I know many of you go to different launch parties and different things, and you've heard people and a lot of product reps talk about hyaluronic acid in old versions versus new versions. You're going to want to make sure that it is a version that works from the top down and the bottom up and kind of almost works simultaneously together. Sometimes just having one version of hyaluronic acid in a product is not enough. So do your due diligence on the research it takes to kind of get behind a brand that sells hyaluronic acid. And then also a great idea is to make sure it's either the very first ingredient on the label or within the first, second, third, fourth. Otherwise, it can simply be only a carrier if it's in the middle or at the bottom, correct? Yeah, you're going to look at all your labels now. Huh. Okay, so when you're thinking hydration, here's kind of the comparison I give. I want you to label 3 things for me: good, better, best. I do this with a lot of different modalities, but we're going to talk about hydration for a minute. So good, better, best. So if you're thinking hydration, good, which is not good at all, you're going to put under that one mineral oil. Who in here has seen mineral oil in like every over-the-counter product there ever was? There's a very special brand at the makeup counters and department stores. It's in a little yellow little pump bottle, and I can't talk about the brands, but it's a part of a 3-step system, which many of you, if you're kind of my age, have probably used in your teen years, and you're thinking, oh, okay, the first ingredient in your moisturizer is mineral oil. Is mineral oil comedogenic, which means pore clogging? Is that going to be good for everybody? I went to a makeup school in Richmond, Virginia years ago, and the only thing I remember my teacher ever saying was that that product that I can't name, and we'll just say it's the product in a yellow bottle that has mineral oil at the top, is the equivalent of putting lard on your skin. And I thought, wow, okay, I never want to do that. So mineral oil is very heavily used. Do you think it's a cheaper hydrator? Does it bind oil or water to the skin? oil, which is not a good thing. So that might be in our good category. Our better category can be glycerin, Glycerin, glycerin. Y'all have seen glycerin, right? Glycerin can either be an active ingredient as a hydrator, which is totally fine. You'll see it in clinical grade products. You'll see it in over-the-counter products. But it is oftentimes used as a carrier. Kind of creates that slipping of the skin. You might even see it with a hyaluronic acid ingredient in the label too. So that is fine. I'm all right with glycerin. But best would be, of course, hyaluronic acid. Hyaluronic acid, it binds water, and where is it naturally found? In our skin. It's a type of glycosaminoglycan, and you might either see it on a label as hyaluronic acid, or you might see it as another thing called sodium hyaluronate, which is a synthetic man-made version of it. Okay, good to go on that one? All right, I'm sure y'all know what this brand is, but I can't talk to you about it. Okay? So, I love stem cells, and I hope you guys do too. Here's the thing. My dad is going through kidney failure right now. And unfortunately, it's the year 2020, and Harvard University is doing some studies on how to take fetal stem cells from umbilical cords and bring life to old, dead organs again. So it's in development and it's in research, specifically for medicine, for things like that. Unfortunately, he might not be able to ever take advantage of that. It's many years down the pipeline. What you will see now, especially I'm from Columbia, there are stem cell centers out there that take either adult stem cells. You and I have stem cells right now, but they're full of free radical damage. I don't know why you would want those. Or taking fetal stem cells and they're injecting them into knee joints for pain and things like that. So that's happening. Many of you might have taken advantage of that at some point or know what I'm talking about. Yep. I'm sorry? I have no doubt about that. There's so many things. What else have they done? They've grown organs too, like 3D printing of organs, stuff like that, something. Stem cells are incredible. One thing I wish I would have done when I had my son, who is 9 years old now, is to bank the umbilical cord. Who in here has done that?
It's very expensive to maintain though.
Very expensive. You have to keep it in a specific temperature sort of situation and pay for it every year. And I want to say at the time that I last looked at it, it was like $1,500 a year, something like that, which to me is totally worth it. If you can use stem cells to save the life of your family and your child, of course, that is always a good choice. But if you thought that they were just throwing away your umbilical cords after you gave birth, they are not. They're using them in labs for medical reasons, and I think that's what they should do, so that's fine. Now, in skincare, like I said, I can't talk about brands, but there was a very specific brand out when I was first getting into aesthetics that came from an atopic pregnancy, so not an aborted fetus like you would think. They put it in a petri dish and they kind of, separated it thousands and millions of times, and it came out as a product that can be applied for post-surgical scars, and it worked very, very well. And they had a lot of backlash over that. What do y'all think about that? Human stem cells for using it for beautification. Not just for health, but for more just beautification.
So for me, an ectopic pregnancy is already something that,
It just happens, right?
just happens.
Right.
It's out of anybody's control.
I can see both
Use
sides.
that for something good, why not?
I can see both sides, but unless you really educate people on that was an atopic pregnancy instead of the other way around, of course there can be some question marks about that. But nonetheless, I looked the company up not too long ago and they have switched everything over to plant-based stem cells, which I love. So if you look here, you've got stem cells in aesthetics. It can be plant or human-based, but most of the time these days you're gonna see the plant-based versions, okay? And you're gonna see things, I can't read that far away, you're going to see things like bone marrow. Anybody do microchanneling in here? I've taught y'all a lot of that. That particular company that we do microchanneling with, they have bone marrow stem cells, which is completely fine. That's more adult based. Okay, which again, adults, are we full of free radical damage from just being out in the sun for years, from drinking all the alcohol, from being a part of whatever? It's just life. So bone marrow's fine, but it's not going to be your best source of stem cells. So you might see that there. You also might see adipose tissue, which requires extraction by liposuction. So you can, of course, gain stem cells that way too. So look at your sources of the stem cells, and you're good to go. Then you can also obtain stem cells through blood. It can be taken through the umbilical cords, like I said, okay? But of course, plant-based are gonna be the best sources now. And here's your short, simple definition of stem cells from a nourishing standpoint, is it produces new cells without breaking skin cells down. And since we just talked about mitosis, do y'all think that's very interesting? It's very interesting, producing new cells without breaking skin cells down. I think that's a neat thing to think about. Okay, peptides. Who in here uses peptides? Love peptides. What do peptides do? If you think of an easy definition for peptides, I always kind of do this number. And peptides help to tighten the skin by forming almost like a chain link fence to help hold everything up. Now, if you went to esthetician school back in the day like I did when I was 18 or so, none of that existed. There was nothing topical out there that did any sort of skin tightening. You were kind of just, you know, out of the loop on that. As an esthetician, we couldn't tighten the saggy jowls. We could not tighten the submental fat pad right here, but now we can do that via radiofrequency. Of course, lasers can do that kind of stuff, and then topically you've got your peptides. So I want you to think of just a chain link fence, just tighten everything up. If you have a peptide infused serum, is it going to be more nourishing and hydrating, or is it going to be something where you need to maybe add some hydration to it? It's nourishing, but if you have a lot of peptides in it, the mechanism of tightening, you might feel like you need some additional hydration. So think about that. That's something to teach your clients. If you're kind of getting them on these really heavy peptide-infused serums, it can feel hydrating going on, but then you're still going to need to add a little bit of hydration to it, because just that tightening does kind of dry out the skin just a little bit. Have y'all used anything with peptides in it? Does this make sense? Okay. Love peptides. That would be perfect. If you look here, it says it's a biologically occurring short chain of amino acid monomers linked by peptide or amide bonds. Again, short chains of amino acids. Those are protein structures that are linked together. So that chain link fence to tighten again. And here's the thing. If you see oligopeptide 7, pentapeptide 5, tetrapeptide 17, all these different ones, no big deal. If it has the word peptide in it, it is a different synthetically made structure of peptides that were made in the lab, but they all overall do the same thing, which is the tightening. If I really broke it down and just did a whole class on peptides, they all actually do something a little bit different, and they work either synergistically together, or some of them actually work best alone. So there's many different types, but overall they tighten. So that's a good definition there. Okay, then you have got growth factors. Anybody know what a growth factor is? Anybody use growth factors? Okay, so growth factors are kind of the newer item, and here's how I explain it. If you look at retinol on the acid category, retinol actually kind of, speeds up cell turnover, but it also sheds the skin. Okay, if you have got growth factors, they help to do this. They upregulate cellular metabolism. Upregulate cellular metabolism. Does that sound kind of like what retinol is doing? Retinol is speeding up cell turnover. Growth factors are upregulating or increasing cellular metabolism, which metabolism is energy, in order for the skin to kind of naturally shed faster on its own, but without the shedding involved with retinol. Isn't that interesting? So it's kind of a nourishing version of retinol, if you will, and growth factors are found in the body too. If you look and see what it says here, it says growth factors are proteins that regulate cellular growth. Proliferation means what? Shedding. And differentiation, which also means shedding. Okay. Under controlled conditions, they play an important part in maintaining healthy skin structure and function. Okay. Does that make sense? So growth factors, you'll probably see those paired with peptides or paired with retinol or something like that, or used alone. Okay. Then you have a little bit more information on growth factors. Okay. Then you see my superhero. We're going to end with this and then move on to another whole topic, and then we're going to get into hormones and then move on, and we're going to be done by 2 o'clock. Are y'all okay with that? Good. Okay. So antioxidants, there are many, and here's what they do overall. Antioxidants, from a scientific atomic standpoint, they help to donate electrons back to unstable atoms. Atoms have to be paired, right? You have 2 electrons that are on that atomic little circle, if you think about that. So you have to have paired electrons. When free radical comes into the picture, what happens? It takes 1 electron, and that atom is scurrying around saying, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And what ends up happening is it kind of steals an electron from another atom, and that one steals one from another, and it becomes a chain link reaction, which can cause sickness, illness, disease, all of that terrible stuff. But skin-wise, if you lack antioxidant support, you're not going to have healthy skin cells. You need all of that to survive ultimately. So antioxidants are key. So of course, if you have the villain in the situation, it's going to be free radicals. And then if we have our superhero, who's our superhero? Antioxidants. Okay, all right. So here in your slides, y'all see this category. You may recognize a couple of these. Who in here knows what glutathione is? You've heard of this if you have been in my advanced class, Morgan. Glutathione is an antioxidant. It can also serve as a buffer in other chemical peel solutions, okay, or it can be used alone. You have also got green tea, polyphenols, flavonoids, acai berry. You've got vitamin E, vitamin C, which we've already discussed, all sorts of other ones. So just kind of think about the fact that there's many antioxidants out there, and ultimately we kind of want to pair some of our man-made ingredients with our natural plant-derived antioxidants. That really should be the ultimate goal, okay?